Have you ever felt anxious without being able to explain exactly why? Nothing terrible is happening. There is no immediate danger, and yet your body feels tense. Your mind keeps searching for something that might go wrong. You tell yourself to relax. You try to distract yourself, but the feeling keeps returning. Most of us treat anxiety as something we need to eliminate, a malfunction, a weakness, a problem standing between us and a normal life. But more than a century ago, Carl Gustav Jung approached psychological distress from a different direction. He believed that uncomfortable emotions can sometimes reveal conflicts we have not yet consciously understood. Not because every fear contains a hidden message, and not because anxiety should always be trusted, but because the conscious mind does not always know everything that is happening within us. Modern psychology gives us an important distinction. Anxiety is a normal human response to possible threat and uncertainty. But when it becomes persistent, excessive, difficult to control, or begins interfering with everyday life, it may be part of an anxiety disorder with causes far more complex than any single unconscious conflict. Jung was asking a different question. When there is something psychologically meaningful beneath our anxiety, what might we discover if we stop asking only, "How do I make this feeling disappear?" and begin asking, "What is happening inside me that I haven't understood yet?" Perhaps a life we don't want to lose, a decision we're afraid to make, an identity we've outgrown, or a part of ourselves we've spent years avoiding. In this video, we'll explore what Jung actually believed about fear and the unconscious, why anxiety can appear even when no obvious danger exists, how avoidance can keep fear alive, where modern psychology supports a very different explanation, and how to recognize the difference between a fear that needs to be questioned, a conflict that deserves attention, and anxiety that needs something more than interpretation. Because sometimes fear is a false alarm. Sometimes it is protecting you from real danger. And sometimes it may be pointing toward a question you have not yet been willing to ask. Imagine waking up with the feeling that something is wrong. Your heart is beating slightly faster. Your body feels tense. Your mind immediately begins searching for an explanation. Is it work? Money? Your relationship? Something you forgot? Something that might happen tomorrow? But nothing quite explains the feeling. This is one of the most confusing things about anxiety. Fear usually seems to have an object, a dangerous animal, a threatening person, an approaching car. Something is there, and the body prepares to respond. Anxiety can be different. The threat may be distant, uncertain, or difficult to identify. Modern psychology makes an important distinction here. Fear is generally associated with more immediate danger. Anxiety is often connected to the anticipation of possible threat, something that could happen even when we don't know whether it will. And uncertainty matters enormously. Research increasingly suggests that difficulty tolerating uncertainty is closely connected with anxiety and worry. When the future feels unpredictable, the mind tries to reduce that uncertainty. It scans, predicts, rehearses possibilities. What if this happens? What if I make the wrong decision? What if something goes wrong? The strange part is that this system exists for a reason. Anticipating danger can protect us, but when the search for certainty becomes excessive, the same protective system can begin generating distress of its own. Carl Jung approached this experience from a very different psychological tradition. He believed conscious awareness represents only part of the psyche. Emotions, impulses, conflicts, and associations can influence us before we clearly understand where they came from. For Jung, this meant that psychological discomfort could sometimes deserve investigation rather than immediate dismissal. But this distinction is crucial. He was not saying that every anxious feeling contains a secret truth. Anxiety can misjudge danger. It can exaggerate uncertainty. And in anxiety disorders, the alarm itself can become persistent and impairing. So anxiety should not automatically be interpreted as intuition. Feeling that something terrible will happen does not mean something terrible will happen. The more useful question is different. What is this anxiety responding to? Sometimes the answer is an actual threat. Sometimes it is uncertainty itself. Sometimes it is a learned pattern of anticipating danger. And sometimes, from a Jungian perspective, the discomfort may be connected to a conflict we have not yet put into words. That distinction changes everything, because before we can understand what fear may be telling us, and we need to understand what the mind does when it encounters something it desperately does not want to feel. When anxiety appears, our first instinct is usually to make it stop. We distract ourselves, avoid the situation, seek reassurance, postpone the decision, or carefully organize our lives around whatever seems capable of triggering the feeling. And for a moment, it often works. You cancel the difficult conversation and immediately feel relief. You avoid the social event and the tension disappears. You ask someone, "Are you sure everything is okay?" They reassure you, and your mind finally becomes quiet. This relief teaches the brain something important. Avoidance worked. And that is where a protective response can quietly become a trap. Modern psychology has studied this process extensively. Avoidance can reduce distress in the short term, but when it becomes our automatic response to fear, it can prevent us from learning something equally important. Perhaps the situation was tolerable. Perhaps the feared outcome would never have happened. Perhaps we could have handled the discomfort even if it did. Instead, the brain receives a simpler lesson. I escaped, therefore there must have been something to escape from. Over time, this cycle can help maintain anxiety. Research on experiential avoidance, the tendency to escape unwanted thoughts, emotions, memories, or bodily sensations, has linked rigid avoidance with anxiety and broader psychological distress. Carl Jung described avoidance in very different language. He believed that what we refuse to confront psychologically does not necessarily disappear from the psyche. A conflict can remain outside conscious attention, while still influencing our emotions, choices, and reactions. Imagine a house with one room you never enter. Every time you approach the door, you feel uncomfortable, so you turn around. Eventually, you may organize your entire life around avoiding that room. The strange thing is, you still don't know what is inside. From a Jungian perspective, some anxiety can work in a similar way. The feeling itself does not tell us what the hidden conflict is. And it certainly does not prove that one exists, but repeatedly avoiding whatever awakens discomfort can make it harder to discover what the discomfort actually means. Modern psychology reaches a related practical insight without requiring Jung's theory of the unconscious. Trying to eliminate every unwanted internal experience can sometimes narrow behavior and interfere with valued goals. Psychological flexibility involves being able to experience discomfort without automatically allowing it to determine what we do. So perhaps the first useful question isn't, "How can I never feel anxious again?" It is, "What does anxiety make me repeatedly avoid?" A conversation, uncertainty, failure, being judged, making a choice you cannot take back. Because once we identify what fear keeps pushing us away from, we can begin examining something deeper, whether the danger lies in the world around us, or in what that experience threatens to reveal about ourselves. Sometimes the thing we fear most isn't what will happen. It's what that event might mean about us. Imagine someone who has spent 20 years building a successful career. They are respected, reliable, good at what they do. Then an opportunity appears to begin something completely different. Part of them feels excited, but another part becomes intensely anxious. At first, the explanation seems obvious. What if I fail? But look more closely, and the fear may contain another question. If I'm no longer this successful person, then who am I? Modern psychology shows that our identities are built around multiple ideas about ourselves: who we believe we are, who we hope to become, and who we believe we are supposed to be. Research on self-discrepancy has found that conflicts between these different representations of ourselves can be associated with distinct forms of emotional distress. Carl Jung approached this problem through his concept of the persona. The persona is the social identity that allows us to function in the world. Professional, parent, partner, the responsible one, the strong one, the person who never disappoints anyone. Jung did not believe these roles were fake. The problem begins when one role becomes so important that we confuse it with the whole personality. Then anything that threatens the role can begin to feel like a threat to the self. A career change is no longer simply a career change. It threatens the identity of being successful. Setting a boundary is no longer simply saying no. It threatens the identity of being kind. Leaving an unhappy relationship may threaten the identity of being loyal. Admitting uncertainty may threaten the identity of being strong. Modern research uses different language, but it confirms something important. Threats to how we understand or evaluate ourselves can produce powerful psychological responses, and perceived negative evaluation can operate across personal, relational, and group identities. From a Jungian perspective, this is where anxiety can become psychologically revealing, not because fear tells us what decision to make, and not because anxiety proves that our current identity is wrong, but because the situations that frighten us can sometimes expose what our identity depends upon. If disappointing someone feels unbearable, perhaps being agreeable has become more than a behavior. If failure feels catastrophic, perhaps achievement has become more than a goal. It has become evidence of who you are. And suddenly the question changes. Instead of asking only, "What am I afraid will happen?" we can also ask, "What would it mean about me if it did?" Because sometimes, what fear is protecting most fiercely is not our safety. It is the version of ourselves we are terrified to lose. If fear can protect an identity, what happens to the parts of ourselves that identity leaves out? Carl Jung believed they do not simply disappear. They often remain outside conscious awareness. This is where his concept of the shadow becomes important. The shadow is often misunderstood as the darkest or most dangerous part of the personality. But Jung's idea was broader than that. It can include anger, jealousy, selfishness, fear. But it can also contain qualities we have learned not to express: confidence, ambition, sensitivity, creativity, the ability to say no, even the desire for a different life. Imagine someone who has spent years being the dependable person. They never disappoint anyone. They accept every responsibility. They rarely complain. From the outside, their life may appear stable. But eventually, something changes. They begin feeling anxious whenever another responsibility appears. They don't understand why. Nothing terrible has happened. They simply tell themselves, "I shouldn't feel this way." From a Jungian perspective, the anxiety itself would not provide a diagnosis or a simple answer, but it might invite a question. What has this person never allowed themselves to want? Perhaps rest, perhaps freedom, perhaps the right to disappoint someone. Perhaps nothing so symbolic is happening at all. That possibility matters too. But Jung believed that when parts of the personality remain unconscious, they can still influence conscious life through emotions, reactions, fantasies, and recurring patterns. Modern psychology does not use Jung's shadow as a scientific explanation for anxiety. Yet there is an interesting parallel. Research on experiential avoidance examines what happens when people rigidly try to escape or suppress unwanted thoughts, feelings, memories, and bodily sensations. Persistent avoidance is associated with a range of psychological difficulties, and contemporary approaches increasingly emphasize psychological flexibility rather than eliminating every uncomfortable internal experience. This does not mean suppressed emotions secretly cause every case of anxiety, nor does it mean every frightening thought contains wisdom. The important idea is simpler. What we feel and what we do about what we feel are not the same thing. Anxiety may say, run, but running is not always the only possible response. Sometimes we can become curious. Why does saying no frighten me so much? Why does uncertainty feel unbearable? Why am I terrified of disappointing this person? Why does the life everyone tells me I should want make me feel trapped? For Jung, questions like these mattered because psychological growth required becoming conscious of more than the identity we prefer to see. And perhaps this is where fear becomes useful without becoming our guide. We do not have to obey it. We do not have to assume it is telling the truth. But we can examine what repeatedly activates it. Because once fear is no longer treated only as an enemy to defeat, we can begin distinguishing between the fears that keep us trapped and the fears that appear precisely because we are approaching something we need to face. If anxiety can sometimes reveal something important, what are we supposed to do with it? Carl Jung's answer was not simply, trust your fear. Fear can be wrong. It can exaggerate danger. It can keep us attached to patterns that no longer protect us. And sometimes, anxiety is not a symbolic message waiting to be decoded at all. The more useful approach is to create enough distance from the fear, to examine it without automatically obeying it. Imagine standing at the entrance to a bridge. Your mind says, don't cross. Immediately, two possibilities appear. You can turn around and experience relief, or you can pause long enough to ask, what exactly am I predicting will happen? Modern anxiety treatments often work with this distinction. Cognitive behavioral therapy helps people identify patterns of thinking and behavior that contribute to anxiety and examine them more carefully. For some anxiety disorders, exposure-based approaches go further. Instead of repeatedly escaping feared situations, people gradually and safely confront them. The goal is not simply to prove that nothing bad will ever happen. It is to learn that anxiety can be tolerated, that feared outcomes may be less likely than expected, and that fear does not always need to determine behavior. Acceptance and commitment. Therapy approaches the problem from another direction. Rather than making the disappearance of anxiety the condition for living, it emphasizes psychological flexibility, the ability to experience difficult internal states while continuing to act in ways connected to meaningful goals and values. Research supports psychological flexibility as an important process within ACT, while CBT remains a well-established treatment for anxiety. Jung used very different language, but his broader project also involved becoming more conscious of what influences us. Instead of being controlled by psychological forces we do not recognize. That gives us three very different questions to ask when fear appears. Is there a real danger I need to respond to? Is my mind predicting a threat that needs to be tested rather than automatically believed? Or is this situation touching something psychologically important that I have been avoiding? Sometimes the answer will be obvious, sometimes it won't. And if anxiety becomes persistent, overwhelming, or begins interfering with work, relationships, sleep, or everyday functioning, interpretation alone is not enough. Anxiety disorders are treatable and evidence-based psychotherapy, and for some people, medication can help. Perhaps psychological maturity is not becoming fearless. It is becoming better at knowing what to do when fear arrives. Sometimes protect yourself. Sometimes question the prediction. Sometimes move toward what you have been avoiding. And sometimes listen carefully enough to discover that beneath the fear, there is not a warning about the future, but a truth about the life you are living now. Fear is one of the oldest systems in the human mind. It protects us, warns us, prepares us for uncertainty, but it does something else as well. It reveals where our attention has become trapped. Carl Jung believed that psychological growth requires us to become more conscious of the forces shaping our lives. Not to obey every emotion, not to search for hidden meaning in every anxious thought, but to become curious about the patterns we repeatedly avoid. Modern psychology gives us an equally important reminder. Anxiety is not always insight. Sometimes the mind overestimates danger. Sometimes avoidance keeps fear alive. And when anxiety becomes persistent or begins interfering with everyday life, it deserves evidence-based care, not simply interpretation. But between blindly trusting fear and desperately trying to silence it, there may be another possibility. We can listen. We can ask what the fear is predicting. We can examine whether that prediction is true. And sometimes we can ask what this fear threatens inside our identity. Perhaps courage is not the absence of anxiety. Perhaps it is the ability to hear fear clearly, without automatically giving it control. If you enjoyed this exploration of Carl Jung's ideas, subscribe to Hidden Patterns. In our next episode, we'll uncover another hidden pattern shaping the human mind. Until then, remember this. Sometimes fear is telling you to step back. Sometimes it is asking you to look closer. And sometimes, the thing waiting on the other side of fear is not danger. It is a part of yourself you haven't met yet.